She wanted him dead. But the arrow that should have ended his life, bound him forever. The Starseeker ruptured like a dying star, its hull shattering under the violent pull of the magnetic storm. Lieutenant Rayn Valor barely had time to launch the emergency pod before the explosion swallowed the rear thrusters. Light bled into the void, and then silence. Gravity returned with a vengeance. The escape pod plummeted, spinning like a burning bullet through the atmosphere of an uncharted planet. Rayn's fists clenched the controls, jaw locked against the centrifugal force threatening to tear his skull apart. Warnings screamed red across the dash. He ignored them. Outside, twin suns seared the horizon. One a violent orange, the other pale and flickering like an eye that refused to close. Below, the landscape unfolded in terrifying clarity, dunes that pulsed like living skin, jagged canyons bleeding steam, black silhouettes of creatures too large to be real. Rayn didn't pray. He had stopped doing that years ago. The impact was brutal. Metal screamed. Sand exploded. The pod carved a crater into the surface, kicking up a storm of glassy particles. For a moment, everything was still except the crackling of the shattered console and the shallow rasp of Rayn's breath. He was alive. Pain laced his ribs, and hot blood trickled down his temple. He winced as he unbuckled, dragging himself to the hatch and slamming his boot against it until it hissed open. The desert air slammed into him like a wall, dry, sharp, and alien. Rayn stumbled out, boots sinking into red-gold sand. He squinted up at the sky, eyes watering against the twin flares above. This wasn't any planet in Alliance records. This was Velcara, the name etched later into his bones by the people who called it home. But right now, it was just hell. His training kicked in. Inventory check. He had a canteen with recycled water, a pulse knife with half a charge, 2 protein bars, and a locator beacon that blinked with the dull desperation of a man whispering in a thunderstorm. No signal. No response. Rayn inhaled sharply, nostrils burning. He scanned the horizon, wavy heat lines, far off cliffs like the bones of some buried giant. Something moved in the distance. Tall. Loping. Watching. 3 steps ahead of panic, he moved. The pod was too exposed. He needed shade, elevation, perspective. He reached a narrow ridge before nightfall. The temperature plummeted as the suns fell behind jagged teeth of stone. From the ridge, he could see strange glowing plants pulsing in clusters around dried riverbeds. He noted them mentally, possible hydration sources. Predators too. He spotted movement. Something with too many legs. That night, wrapped in his thermal blanket beneath the rock overhang, Rayn didn't sleep. Not really. He drifted in and out, haunted by the blast, by faces he'd left behind. Aaron, his younger brother, laughing in the snow back on Earth. His mother's voice reading to him during blackouts. The face of his commander cold, unimpressed, giving the order that sent him on this doomed mission to the rim. They called it cartographic risk assessment. He called it exile. Rayn's breath misted in the cold. He looked at the locator again. Still nothing. He whispered into the void, not really expecting an answer. Why am I still alive? The desert answered with silence. On the 3rd day, dehydration hit harder than any blow he'd ever taken. Rayn's tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth. His eyes burned. The last of the water was gone. He spotted an oasis late that afternoon, a glint of silver between broken rocks. Every instinct screamed trap, but thirst overruled fear. He approached slowly, hand on his knife. The pool shimmered, surrounded by thorn bushes that looked like petrified coral. He knelt. Then he heard a shift in the wind, not natural. A whistle, soft and precise. Rayn moved without thinking. His hand shot up and caught the arrow an inch from his throat. It vibrated in his grip, warm from velocity. The tip was jagged bone, coated in something oily. He rose slowly. And from behind the rocks, she appeared. Blue-skinned. Eyes like molten gold. Crimson hair tied back in warrior's braids. Leather armor clung to her body, decorated with bone charms and green moss. A second arrow was already notched, bow raised. Zara. They didn't speak the same language yet, but in that moment, the silence between them said everything. She looked at the arrow in his hand, then at his eyes, and her expression changed from rage to something closer to horror. Valkyra had rules. She had just married him by trying to kill him. Rayn didn't lower the arrow. Neither did she lower her bow. They stood like that for what felt like an eternity, surrounded by the stillness of the desert and the strange hush that followed deadly intent. In the distance, wind carried sand in slow, whispering spirals. The tension between them was sharper than the arrow's edge. Then came the sound of footsteps. Dozens. Soft but coordinated. From behind the rocks and ledges, more figures emerged, all blue-skinned, all armed. Warriors, men, and women, their armor a blend of bone, leather, and metal scraps shaped by time and tradition. They encircled Rayn in silence. No one moved. No one needed to. A voice broke the silence. Deep, feminine, commanding. Zara flinched. An older woman stepped forward. Her hair, once red like Zara's, was now streaked with silver and twisted into a high braid adorned with stone beads. Her gaze was a blade honed by years. He caught the arrow, she said in Valkyrian, the language alien to Rayn but strangely rhythmic. Zara muttered something sharply in response. It sounded like defiance. The elder walked closer to Rayn. Her eyes scanned him as if inspecting a tool or a threat. Then she looked at the arrow still gripped in his hand. Her lips tightened. She turned back to the others and spoke with finality. The warriors around them shifted. Some laughed. Others gasped. Zara went pale. Rayn stayed perfectly still, adrenaline making his limbs thrum. He didn't understand the words, but he understood what was happening. He wasn't being executed. He was being claimed. Zara dropped her bow. Her fists clenched. She strode to Rayn and shouted at the elder, but the older woman only raised a hand. Authority. Tradition. Another warrior, younger and male, approached and tossed a long ceremonial cloth toward Rayn. It fell at his feet. More words. More looks. Then laughter. Rayn finally spoke, voice dry and low. I'm going to need a damn translator. Zara hissed at him in perfect clarity. You weren't supposed to survive. Rayn lifted the arrow slightly. Nice shot. But maybe next time, aim for the heart. The warrior beside Zara stepped forward, bristling, but the elder held him back. She stepped close, just enough for her voice to be heard. In our laws, she said slowly, her accent thick but comprehensible, when a warrior shoots to kill, and the arrow is caught, souls are bound. Rayn blinked. Bound? As in? You are her mate now? He looked at Zara. She looked like she wanted to strangle him. I don't recall signing up for alien speed dating, he muttered. Neither did I, Zara spat. They marched him to the encampment. Valkyra's desert opened into a canyon that shielded a hidden village carved from stone. Structures were built into the cliffs, layered with colored fabrics and ancient banners. Warriors trained in open circles. Children sprinted barefoot through the dust. Traders haggled with goods made of bone, shell, and hide. A fire burned at the center, smoke trailing upward like a signal to forgotten gods. Rayn was brought before the flames. The elder spoke to the gathering. Dozens gathered. Hundreds. All turned to him. Zara stood at his side, tense as a bowstring. Then came the rite. Symbols drawn in sand. Chanting. The arrow placed between them. A ritual knife offered. Rayn watched, trying to follow. Zara refused to meet his eyes. Do you people always treat attempted murder as foreplay? He whispered. She ignored him. But her fingers twitched. He was given water. Real water. He drank slowly, not out of trust but necessity. Later, in a private cavern, the elder came to him again. Her name was Elia. She sat beside him, watching the fire. Zara is the best among us. Fierce. Loyal. She lost her brother to your kind. Rayn looked up. My kind? He trusted the ones who came from the sky. They brought sickness. Promised help. He died choking on blood. Rayn felt a weight press into his chest. That wasn't me. No, Elia agreed. But your face carries the same stars. She stood to leave. You must prove you are not the same. Rayn stared into the fire, words echoing. He didn't ask for this. But neither had she. And maybe, just maybe, the laws of Valkara weren't as strange as the ones he once swore to protect. Maybe here, in the dust and flame, he would find something worth understanding. Or die trying. They brought him to the cliffs before dawn. The sky was a deep violet bruise, and the twin suns had not yet risen. Rayn stood shirtless, sand clinging to his skin, muscles tense from the cold. Around him, warriors gathered in a silent circle. Some watched with curiosity. Others with contempt. Zara leaned against a nearby boulder, arms crossed, her eyes unreadable. Elia stepped forward. In her hands, she held a bow unlike any Rayn had seen, crafted from pale bone, strong with sinew, and adorned with feathers the color of dried blood. The Dune Strider hunts when the storm comes, she said, voice low. You must kill it with this. One arrow. Rayn took the bow. It felt wrong in his hands, primitive, too light. No sights, no stabilizers, no targeting assist. Just instinct. What does it look like? He asked. Zara answered, voice flat. You won't see it. Until it kills you. The wind shifted. A low rumble echoed across the rocks. Elia turned toward the desert. The storm comes. They left him then, alone on the ridge. Minutes passed. Then the sky exploded. A wall of sand surged across the horizon, blotting out the suns. The temperature dropped. Visibility fell to nothing. Static danced on Rayn's skin. He crouched, shielding his face, the bow clutched tight. This is suicide, he thought. Then the ground trembled. He remembered his training. Don't panic, observe, adapt. Rayn dropped to one knee, brushing the sand with his hand. Tracks barely visible, but there. Deep, uneven. 6 legs. Too wide for any native creature he'd seen so far. The Dune Strider. He closed his eyes. Let the wind howl. Let the sand tear at his skin. He listened. A breath. Movement. Then silence. Rayn rolled sideways just as the creature struck. It erupted from the sand like a living blade. Twice the height of a man, its skin shimmered like liquid glass. 6 limbs, each ending in scythe-like claws. No eyes. No sound. It lunged. Rayn ran. He didn't fire. Not yet. The bow would do nothing unless he could make the shot count. He ducked under a ledge, baiting the creature into following. It did. As it passed under the natural arch, Rayn climbed the rocks behind it. Sand blinded him. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the canyon in pulses of blue and white. He waited. Breathing steady. Then he jumped. Midair, he drew the arrow and fired. It struck the joint behind the creature's head. A perfect shot. The Dune Strider shrieked, its death cry swallowed by the storm. It collapsed, convulsing, then lay still. Silence returned. Rayn fell to his knees. Minutes passed before the wind began to die. When he finally returned to the camp, dragging the corpse behind him, the entire tribe had gathered. They stared, wide-eyed. Some whispered. Others simply moved aside. Zara stood near the fire, eyes locked on him. Elia approached. She looked at the wound, at the arrow still buried in the beast's neck. Then at Rayn. You learn fast, she said. Rayn didn't respond. Zara stepped forward. You got lucky? Maybe, Rayn replied. But luck favors those who prepare? That wasn't strength. That was calculation. And yet it worked. She frowned. You fight like a machine. No instinct. No fire. He stepped closer. And you fight like a storm. Beautiful. Unpredictable. Dangerous. But storms burn out. She stared at him, jaw tight. So which is better, she asked. Neither, he said. That's why we need both. She didn't answer. But she didn't look away. That night, as the tribe feasted on the Dune Strider's flesh and chanted songs Rayn didn't yet understand, he sat at the edge of the firelight, the bow resting beside him. Zara sat across the flames. Not smiling. But not scowling either. Maybe that was something. Maybe that was a start. They descended into the scorched canyons at midday, when the suns hung overhead like twin eyes burning with quiet judgment. The heat shimmered off the stone in waves, but it was the silence that made Rayn uneasy. Too quiet, too still, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. The mouth of the trial lay ahead, a narrow crevice in the canyon wall, its edges scorched black, glowing faintly from within. The air around it pulsed with warmth, and even the most stoic of the warriors paused before entering. Elia handed Rayn a spear, its head made from obsidian fused with some glowing mineral. The Molten Reapers are ancient, she said. Born of fire and hunger. They move like smoke, strike like lightning. Touch their blades, and you won't bleed. You'll burn. Rayn nodded. Zara didn't look at him. She adjusted the straps on her bracers and walked into the crevice without a word. Rayn followed. The light dimmed quickly. The walls narrowed. Then the world opened. A vast chamber stretched before them, layered in tiers of black volcanic rock, intersected by narrow bridges of obsidian no wider than a man's shoulders. Below, molten rivers bubbled and hissed, casting an infernal glow on the ceiling above. Occasional gouts of flame erupted without warning. Cross to the other side, Zara said, her voice echoing. The flammy heart torch waits. She leapt first, landing on a narrow bridge like a dancer trained in war. Her feet found every solid edge, her body twisting with impossible control. Rayn hesitated, then followed a different path, slower, more deliberate. Halfway across, a shriek pierced the air. From beneath the lava, something surged upward, a creature of plated armor and molten veins, long as a shuttlecraft. Blade limbs unfolded from its sides like scissor jaws. Its body flowed unnaturally, part liquid, part chitin. Molten Reaper, Rayn muttered. Zara ducked a slicing limb and flipped backward, tossing a spear that shattered harmlessly against the creature's hide. It turned toward her, sensing motion. Rayn dropped flat, scanning. The bridges vibrated when someone moved. But only certain harmonics seemed to attract the creatures. He tested his weight, adjusted his stride. Less bounce. More glide. Another Reaper emerged near him, jaws wide. He backed onto a lower ledge, pressed his body flat, and remained perfectly still. The beast paused, then drifted past, its molten eyes blind to his stillness. Zara kept moving, fast and reckless. Rayn calculated. She ran. He observed. She fought. He adapted. They reached the center simultaneously. The flammy heart torch stood embedded in a stone pedestal, its fire an unnatural violet hue, flickering but never fading. Zara moved to take it, but Rayn extended a hand, stopping her. The pedestal's heat, he said. Feel it? It's not ambient. It's reactive. Zara narrowed her eyes, then touched the base lightly. Her skin sizzled. She hissed and pulled away. Trapped. Rayn circled the pedestal, noting the faint grooves beneath. Pressure plates. Weight triggers. Classic. He found a shard of obsidian and jammed it into the base's joint, levering the weight off the trigger. The heat faded. The torch dimmed. He pulled it free. You think too much, Zara said, exasperated. Thinking kept me alive. They began the return. But the Reapers were restless. The torch's glow had stirred them. A quake shook the cavern. One bridge cracked. Zara nearly fell. Rayn caught her arm, steadied her. They ran. Blades sliced air behind them. One Reaper lunged. Rayn rolled, used his spear to vault across a broken gap. Zara spun, sliced at the creature's eye with a dagger drawn from her boot. It screeched and recoiled. They escaped together, panting, bruised, but alive. Outside, Elia waited. The fire has accepted you, she said. That night, Rayn sat near a quieter fire. Zara sat beside him. You planned everything, she said. I have to. I wasn't born with your instincts. She looked into the flames. My brother used to plan. He wanted to bring peace. Trade. Medicine. He trusted offworlders. They gave him poison. He died slow. So did the children he tried to save. Rayn said nothing. That's why I hated you. At first. He nodded. And now? Zara glanced at him. Now I don't know what to think. He looked into the violet flammy heart torch. I lived among the stars. Saw hundreds of worlds. But I never belonged to any of them. Not really. Always a mission. A purpose. Never a place. She looked at him, softer now. You think Valkyra could be that place? Rayn shrugged. Don't know. But I'm still breathing. That's a start. They said nothing more. But they didn't move apart either. And the fire, for once, felt warm. The surface of the lake shimmered like black glass, still and unnatural. It rested in a perfect circular basin, as though carved by something too precise to be natural. Mist hovered over the water, swirling in unnatural patterns that shifted with no wind. Rayn stood at the edge, staring into it. Zara stepped beside him, her expression blank. But her hands fidgeted, flexing open and closed. She was nervous. This is the Maw, Elias said behind them, her voice solemn. It is a scar left by the Leviathan. A wound in the world. The final trial. Elia handed them ceremonial spears tipped with a dark, porous metal that seemed to absorb light. Not reflect it. The shafts thrummed faintly in Rayn's grip. You will go into the depths. You will summon the Ancient One with your blood. You must return with one of its teeth. Rayn didn't respond. He stepped forward. Zara matched him. Together, they waded into the water. It was colder than he expected. Not freezing. Alive. The sensation was like being watched. Touched. They reached a submerged stone ledge that dropped off into total darkness. Bioluminescent particles drifted beneath them, glowing softly. Symbols formed, then vanished. Blood, Zara said simply. She sliced her palm. Rayn did the same. Their blood mingled with the water and vanished instantly, like it had been swallowed. The lake responded. A distant thrum. The water pulled downward, then surged upward. A shape stirred beneath. The abyssal Leviathan. Something massive swam far below. Rayn couldn't see its full form, only shadows moving with impossible grace and size. Suddenly, a smaller shape breached the surface, a juvenile. 10 meters long, armored, jaws lined with teeth the size of daggers. It shrieked and charged. Rayn readied his spear. Zara moved first. She spun underwater with a speed born of instinct, slashing at its side. Her blow glanced off, barely scratching. The creature struck back, knocking her into the ledge. She sank, stunned. Rayn didn't think. He dove. The water dragged at him. Pressure crushed his ears. He reached Zara, grabbed her arm, pulled her up. The juvenile circled. Zara coughed, gasping. Why? Rayn didn't answer. He pushed her behind him. The juvenile lunged again. Rayn raised the spear, aiming not for its height but its eye. He struck. The spear slid in with a flash of energy. The creature screamed, thrashed, then sank. The water boiled. Everything went still. Then the Ancient One rose. Its form defied understanding. Only part of it surfaced a head the size of a house, plated in jagged black bone. Eyes that gleamed with cold intelligence. It opened its maw. Something broken drifted from its mouth, a shattered tooth. Rayn surged forward, snatching the relic before it vanished. Behind him, Zara screamed. Another juvenile. He turned. It was almost on her. He threw the tooth into his satchel, dropped his weapon, and swam. His body collided with hers, forcing them both downward. He caught her falling spear, twisted, and jammed it upward into the creature's gaping mouth. The tip pierced flesh. It thrashed. Blood turned the water black. For a moment, they floated together, his arm around her waist, her breath ragged against his chest. They broke the surface gasping. The tribe was waiting at the shore, but Rayn saw none of them. Only her. Zara looked at him, trembling. You saved me. Again. You would have done the same. No, she said. I wouldn't have. Not before. He didn't know what to say. Why do you care if I live? Rayn met her gaze. Because I do. She looked down. Her fingers touched the place where he had pulled her back from death. You're not like the others, she whispered. Back at camp, the warriors cheered. But Zara said nothing. That night, she came to his fire. I don't understand you, she said. Rayn smiled faintly. I don't understand myself most days. You were supposed to be a trial. A punishment. Now you're something else. He didn't move. You confuse me, Skyman. Good, he said. You terrify me. She laughed once, quiet and uncertain. Then she sat beside him. They didn't speak again that night. But when the fire died, neither of them left. The challenge came at dawn. Zara stood in the center of the arena, her shadow stretching long across the sand. Around her, warriors of the blazing blades gathered in silence, not with the anticipation of blood but with reverence. This wasn't a punishment. It wasn't tradition. It was her choice. Rayn stepped into the circle opposite her, unarmed. He had left his pulse knife, his makeshift tools, even his armor at the edge of the ring. All he wore was a loose wrap around his waist and the marks of every challenge he had survived. Zara's voice was calm. This fight is not for dominance. It's for truth. Rayn nodded once. Then let's find it. She moved first. Her style was fluid, instinctive, an animal honed by nature and necessity. She struck low, testing his balance, then high with a feint. Rayn deflected, letting her momentum pass through him. He didn't counter right away. He studied. Their battle was more than muscle. It was memory. She remembered her brother, how he died with trust in his heart and poison in his veins. Every strike she threw carried the pain of that betrayal. Rayn remembered isolation, years drifting between stars, the silence of space louder than screams. He moved with the precision of someone who had learned control or gone mad without it. Zara twisted, landing a kick to his side. He grunted, rolled, came up behind her. His hand brushed her shoulder but didn't grip. She spun, elbow arcing toward his face. He ducked. They broke apart, breathing hard. The warriors watched without cheering. They knew what this was. Rayn feinted left, then swept her leg. She caught herself mid-fall, pushed off his chest, and flipped backward. Her feet hit the sand, but not before he closed in and locked her arm. You hold back, she hissed. You don't, he replied. He released her. She growled, confused and angry. Why won't you finish it? Because I'm not fighting to win. I'm fighting to understand. That stopped her. They circled again, slower this time. Your form is rigid, she said, almost as critique. Your attacks are wild, he shot back. But effective. So are mine. Their movements blended, his alliance discipline meeting her Valkyrian instinct. She tried to overwhelm. He redirected. She improvised. He calculated. Then he lunged. Not as a soldier, but as a man trying to reach something deeper. Their bodies collided, locked in place. Neither gaining ground. Zara's breath was warm against his face. Her eyes burned. You changed me, she whispered. Rayn met her gaze. You saved me first. When you didn't shoot again. She blinked. With a cry, she pushed him back and struck hard. He blocked, barely. The blow numbed his arm. You don't belong here, she said. Then why do I keep surviving? She hesitated. That heartbeat was enough. Rayn swept her off balance and brought her to the ground, pinning her. His hands held her wrists not tightly, just enough. He waited. Yield, he said softly. Zara stared up at him. Her chest rose and fell with each breath. Then, slowly, she nodded. He let go and stood. She didn't rise immediately. When she did, it was with quiet dignity. Before the tribe, she turned to face him. You are no longer outsider, she declared. Rayn bowed his head. Later, as the camp returned to its routines, Zara found him beneath a ridge, where wind swept over the canyon. Do you still want to leave? She asked. I haven't wanted that in a while, he replied. She stepped closer. We were never meant to meet, she said. And yet, he answered, here we are. Zara tilted her head. Still afraid of me? He smiled. Only when you're not talking. She laughed, and it wasn't bitter. In that moment, they weren't warrior and invader. Not symbols of old pain or cosmic accident. They were just two people who had fought, bled, and found something worth staying for. The sun rose over the sands of Valkyria, casting long shadows across the jagged rocks and sun-bleached bones that lined the canyons. 5 years had passed since Rayn Valor first fell from the sky, broken and alone. Now, he stood at the edge of the ridge above the village, watching two children race through the dust, their laughter carried on a dry wind. They were his children. A boy and a girl. Tall, fast and impulsive like his mother. Saran, thoughtful and stubborn like his father. Both with their mother's deep blue skin, but Rayn's dark eyes and sharp jawline. They were strong. Resilient. Curious about everything. Zara approached from behind, wrapping a cloth around her shoulders against the morning chill. She stood beside him without a word, her gaze fixed on their children. Saran wants to hunt, she said. Tal wants to fly. Rayn smiled. Give it a few years. He'll be trying to rebuild the pod. He already pulled the guidance crystal out of your toolkit. Rayn laughed. Of course he did. Below them, the village of the Blazing Blades had changed. It still thrived on tradition, on strength, and survival, but new elements had taken root. Solar collectors now adorned some rooftops, carved to blend with Valkyrian stone. Simple diagnostic scanners were used in a healer's tent, calibrated to native biology. Data tablets hung beside bone charms in the communal hut, recording births, harvests, and tribal histories. It had taken time. Trust wasn't given, it was earned. Rayn had brought more than knowledge. He brought intention. He taught not to replace, but to enhance. He never forced. He listened. He helped map disease patterns through water sources. Built filtration systems using salvaged alloy and local materials. He replaced burning fever rituals with nutrient drips and herbal combinations enhanced by chemical analysis. And in return, he learned to walk barefoot across burning stone. To speak in symbols older than Alliance memory. To feel the rhythm of life that moved not in circuits but in blood and silence and sand. Elias still ruled the council, though she now walked with a carved staff Rayn had reinforced with a carbon core. She called him Skyborn, though never with disdain. The warriors respected him. Not for his strength but for what he chose to stay for. In the evenings, he told stories to the young ones, not of Earth or Alliance battles but of the Dune Strider and the Reapers, the Leviathan, and the woman who almost killed him but ended up becoming everything. Zara had grown too, in ways no one but Rayn could see. Her edge hadn't dulled but it had reshaped. She was still fierce, still proud. But when Saran fell, she knelt without hesitation. When a young warrior panicked in training, she stood beside him rather than shout. She loved quietly, with presence instead of words. And Rayn had learned to feel it in every glance, every moment she let her guard fall. Their home was carved into the stone cliff above the lake they once descended into. The Maw. The place that had nearly killed them now glistened in the distance, calm and tamed. Inside their home, a data core hummed softly in the background, connected to Rayn's old beacon. He never turned it off. But he no longer checked it. If the Alliance ever came back, they'd find him here. Not a deserter. Not a lost officer. But a man who found more than orders in the sand. He found family. That night, as firelight danced across the walls, Saran crawled into his lap with a carved bone tablet. "Tell me again," she said, "about the day you caught Mama's arrow." Rayn grinned. Zara looked up from her place near the fire, one eyebrow raised. "That story," she said. "Again." "It's the best one," Saran insisted. Rayn met Zara's eyes. She sighed dramatically, but the smile tugging at her mouth betrayed her. "All right," he said, pulling Saran closer. "It began with fire in the sky, and ended with a woman who didn't miss. Until she did." Tal snorted from the side. "You cheated death." "No," Rayn said, glancing once more at Zara. "I found something worth living for." Outside, the stars turned slowly above Velcara. The wind whispered over stone. And inside that fire-lit home of sand and steel, a new kind of legacy took root, not born of war or conquest, but of choice. Of staying. Of love that never had to speak to be understood. The signal came at midday. A tremor rippled through the sky like a pulse. Birds scattered. The children looked up, shielding their eyes from the twin suns. Rayn was already standing when the shadow fell. The Alliance frigate descended like a metal storm cloud, its hull gleaming with pristine insignia. It landed just beyond the ridge, kicking up a cyclone of dust and awe. Warriors emerged from the canyon, weapons half raised in instinctive defense. Tal and Saran ran to their mother. Zara pulled them behind her. Rayn walked forward. He knew this moment would come. He just hadn't expected it to hurt so much. The ramp extended. Out stepped Commander Vex. He hadn't aged. Or maybe he had, but it was hidden under layers of alloy-threaded uniform and cold resolve. "Lieutenant Rayn Valor," Vex said, his voice amplified through tactical gear. "You are hereby ordered to return to the Hegemony Fleet for debriefing. You've been absent without clearance for 5 years." Rayn didn't flinch. "I sent you everything I knew. Research. Data. Biological logs. That was my debrief." Vex frowned. "You've gone native. Living with them. Breeding with them. Teaching them." Rayn stepped closer, but didn't rise to the bait. "I've been surviving. Helping. Choosing. Your presence here violates 3 separate protocols on cultural contamination and military conduct. My presence here saved lives." Behind him, Zara moved to his side. She held no weapon. Her stance was enough. Vex saw her, saw the children peeking from behind her legs. His jaw tensed. "This isn't a negotiation," he said. "We can extract you by force if necessary." Zara took a step forward, eyes burning. You try, and your men will not leave this place. Warriors emerged across the ridge, bows drawn, spears in hand. Silent. United. Rayn raised a hand not to surrender, but to anchor the moment. You sent me out here to explore, he said. To assess and survive. I did both. I didn't find just a planet. I found people. A life. A reason. Vex's voice lowered. You still wear the insignia. Do you remember what it means? Rayn looked down at the faded patch on his old survival gear. Then he peeled it off and dropped it in the dust. It meant everything once. Now it means I forgot to choose for myself. He stepped back to Zara, to his children. I'm not going, he said. Vex stared at him. Then, quietly, he nodded. The hegemony will write you off as dead, he said. Then let them bury a man I never truly was. He turned his back. The frigate lifted off minutes later, vanishing into the atmosphere without another word. Dust settled over the stone. The world was quiet again. Zara touched his arm. You would have left, for them. Rayn shook his head. I would have left, once. Before I knew what staying meant. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Later, as the suns dipped low, and the children chased fireflies across the ridge, Rayn watched the stars reappear. He had once dreamed of them. Now, they were only reminders. Not of what he had left behind, but of what he had chosen. Some places, he thought, we don't choose to go, but we choose to stay. And that makes all the difference.